This is the Books Podcast presented by Tim Hague.
Ben Aaronovich has made a bit of a splash with the Peter Grant series. That's now 5 full novels and now a novella called The Furthest Station. Now, to be honest, I'm a little bit late to the party. A friend pressed the first one, Rivers of London, into my hand about 3 months ago and said, "You'll like this," and I did. So I borrowed some more from him and liked them too. Ben, thank you for talking to her. What are you eating?
I've just been handed a cake with a Furthest Station cake with the logo on top, so it was too irresistible. I had to have some. Sorry.
We'll work around it.
I will work my way through them. I'll try and do them in the gaps. So if you just keep talking, sometimes that'll be fine.
Well, Peter Grant is a copper who encounters something supernatural on about page 2. I do like the way you sort of hit the ground running there.
There had been reports suggesting there was a ghost on the Metropolitan line, which Jaggett brought to me because disruptive phantasmagoria is the responsibility of the Special Assessment Unit, otherwise known as the Folly, otherwise known as those Weird Bleeders, since, despite being an operational command unit, the SAU consisted of me and Detective Chief Inspector Nightingale, and since inspectors don't get out of bed for anything less than a body in the vicarage, most initial case assessments were done by yours truly.
So this Special Assessment Unit, also known as the Folly, also known as those Weird Bleeders. Let's start with them. What's their brief? Tell us about these people so we can get into what the books are about.
Well, basically, that's quite hard. I always have trouble with this because in my brain it's the Harry Potter joined the Sweeney, and this only applies. Only half the people understand half the reference. Basically, they're policemen that do magic. Originally, the title for the whole series was Magic Cops before I came up with a good title. And it's basically policemen that do magic, who deal with magic and who do the kind of supernatural crime. So if it's a crime done with magic, then it's done by a member of the Folly. And I just thought, well, what would this be like? What would these people actually be like if they were coppers and they did magic? And I wanted to do something. I like police procedurals. I like Rankin and all that kind of, Morse and everyone. So I wanted to do something that would be like that. So, but with magic. So basically, I just sat down and thought, what would it be like? And that's how it came. The reason why it starts in the first 3 pages, we get straight into the supernatural, is because I got fed up with lots of books where you spent 2/3 of the book with a person going, no, magic isn't real. I thought, well, let's just get...
Or that scene in every sort of Hammer horror film in which they have to go, surely you're not suggesting, yes, the supernatural is very real, sir. And that you didn't want to do that scene.
No. Well, I thought it would be quite fun if you have him, because he's an empiricist. I mean, one of the things about Peter Grant is that he's an empiricist. So he met a ghost. So he doesn't sit there going, I can't have met a ghost. He doesn't doubt the evidence of his own senses because he's an empiricist. And then he comes along and he has a superior officer just goes, yeah, magic's real, and fine. And I thought that would make a nice change from that kind of long period of refusing to believe it.
I did enjoy the way you hit the ground running there. We have to start with Peter Grant, which is a very ordinary name, it's a very pedestrian name. I mean, you didn't think Cormoran Strike or something? No,
I went deliberately. It's the Harry Palmer. I went deliberately for the most kind of mundane name I could think of.
So what's his background? He's mixed race, and tell us about. We're going to go through some of the characters.
His dad is an East End jazz musician, one of those classic kind of given a cornet at the age of 14, goes off talented, 50s, 60s, Ronnie Scott's, all that kind of stuff. His mum's from Sierra Leone, another classic kind of came over in the I can't remember, the 70s or the 80s. Meets the dad. She's a jazz groupie, so she meets the jazz and marries the dad. Dad's terrible career-wise. I mean, the dad's has had 4 failed careers. He's now on his 5th career, and was a heroin addict. He's a heroin addict in the first book, and only sort of weaned off the heroin as part of the series. And he, I don't know, he just arrived. I don't really think of them as kind of characters.
Well, what about Nightingale then, his boss? Nightingale's not a run-of-the-mill superior policeman.
Well, you say that, but Nightingale, and we're supposed to call them senior officers, by the way, apparently.
Oh,
You don't say superior officers. So my policemen tell me, or policemen for that matter. You're supposed to call them police. He's a very unusual senior officer. He's a bit out of time. I don't really want to. I don't know, because I don't know how much to give away without giving away the plot of the first book.
Okay, well, we don't need to, but yes, he is slightly out of time. He's an anachronism, shall we say. And he does have some insight. I particularly like the way you keep referring to Isaac Newton as the father of magic, and so that you've repositioned him. But that's a bit your shtick, isn't it? Sort of just laying that level.
Well,
of
that
the
actually came
supernatural.
from one of the Science of Discworld books. I can't remember whether it was one or two. In the Science of Discworld books, they're talking about, because Newton actually spent as much time studying alchemy as he did anything else, and he was fascinated with theological questions. He was a heretic. He wasn't an atheist; he was a heretic, and he was trying to work out the age of the world by measuring the dimensions of the Temple of Jerusalem and things like that. Very esoteric stuff. And one of the Discworld science books once had a little footnote, and it was talking about this thing where Newton is fascinated by the occult, and he's fascinated by alchemy, and they're very dismissive of it. They call it a philopause, which is when a scientist suddenly decides that they can break everyone else's philosophical concepts. And little asterisk said, but of course, if anyone was going to find magic, it was going to be Newton. So I thought, fine. That's my departure point. Is that Newton codifies
and
magic.
he does. He works as the figure. If all of this was true, and you've sort of layered. And well, again, one of the distinctive things about the series is how rather than have it parallel with the sort of Harry Potter thing, where there's a parallel world of wizards, you've got it sort of woven through the world as we find it, and that must have been a deliberate decision.
Well, most people don't know how the police work anyway. Most people don't know what policemen do all day because they watch a lot of TV, and TV is very bad actually at what police work is like. Except for something like Happy Valley, which is very good at kind of like the response officer level, but and so I thought it's quite easy. You can have an organisation in the Metropolitan Police that deals with magic, and people just wouldn't know about it in the same way they don't know about most of the organisations that are inside the Metropolitan Police. And the senior officers know there's a division that does the weird bollocks, but they're not happy about it. And most people...
That's entirely plausible, isn't it? Because they have all sorts of sort of little bits of operational...
Yeah.
You don't really want to know about.
And they don't, because it complicates everything, because they can't, it complicates the paperwork if it's like weird magic. They'd just rather, so basically, and there wasn't a lot of it, you see, that's part of it. There hasn't been a lot of it for a while. So it wasn't, they didn't need a complex bureaucracy. And then now Peter's come along and there's more magic crime about. Peter's kind of devising forms that they can fill in, and they're very happy with Peter because he's good at that kind of stuff.
He's got magic bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, because Peter was deliberately designed to be the antithesis of the stereotype British copper who is a middle-aged white guy who hates authority, ironically, doesn't get on with his superiors, hates paperwork, yearns of the old days of the 1970s, and his marriage is crashing into a booze-fueled kind of like hell. Right? And I thought, well, no, I'm going to do a young mixed-race guy, gets on great with his foot, loves paperwork.
And even occasionally gets laid.
And occasionally gets laid and does not have a...
Isn't angst-ridden.
Isn't angst-ridden. Yes, I wanted to avoid angst. I wanted to do so because when I started writing this, we were right in the middle of the big Stieg Larsson craze, and we had a wave of Scandinavian detectives. Every single one of them more sort of like psychologically dysfunctional than the next, until you got to the kind of Icelandic detectives who barely function, who get out of the morning thinking of their dead sister who died in a climbing accident when they were 12, and you can't get to the crime scene without at least
I knew
one
you'd
mental
think that
breakdown.
about those, because in one of the books you've got a reference to giving somebody one of those knitted sweaters that Scandinavian detectives put on when they're having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
I thought, this is a man who's read.
I deliberately made Peter Grant as different from that as possible. I basically did the Columbo thing. You know how Columbo came about?
No, actually. Oh, no, tell me, go on.
Well, Columbo came about because they said, right, we want to do a TV series. We're going to take all the cliches currently then, which is the late 60s, of American detective stories, police stories, and we're going to turn them on their head. And at that time, like, policemen were portrayed as clean, shaven, suit-wearing, just the facts man, two-fisted, gun-wielding, car-chasing, kind of like, like policemen. And instead we get this shambling, rambling...
wonderful actor.
I mean, they really lucked into the actor, but I mean, it was a beautiful piece of writing. And, we assume, since he is an LAPD officer, that he has a pistol somewhere on his person, but you never see it. And, he has a terrible car, and he never fights anyone. There's no action sequences. And to top it all, the actual total reversal was, who did it right at the beginning, and it becomes how he finds out who did it rather than, who done it. So I thought I'd take that principle and I'd apply it to the current run of, alcohol-soaked jazz. You see, that's why I made his father a jazz musician, because he knows he knows way more than Rebus about jazz. He could talk Rebus under the table, but he doesn't particularly like jazz. It's just that his father was a jazz musician, so he knows all about it.
Before we move on, I still want to do one or two more of the characters, because in The Folly, which is this it's located in a big house on Russell Square, which has been there for this purpose for years and years and years. And there's a housekeeper, Molly. I love Molly. I adore Molly. And she's, well, no, you tell me, what is Molly?
I can't tell you. I'll be giving it away. You haven't got to the bit yet.
No, you can't tell me, can you?
No. I like Molly. I like Molly.
She's deeply intriguing and sinister and marvellous.
Yes, I don't know. She just turned up when I wrote the scene where he walks in, and there she was. I do that a lot. I find
she doesn't speak.
No, she doesn't speak. She's just kind of creepy.
And she does. She frightens you to death.
Yeah.
And she frightens Peter as well.
She wakes Peter up by standing in the doorway until he wakes up through sheer fright.
I want to touch on your conception of magic, because you have to make magic your own. You've got some terms like vestigia, which actually we should probably explain. Unless is that a standard term? Am I just magic?
No, I made most of the stuff up.
What's vestigia?
Vestigia is the sort of afterglow that is left behind by magic, or rather, it can be laid down by magic. And it's very hard because they don't have a working theory of how magic works. It is rather like Isaac Newton and his laws of motion. You see, Isaac Newton figured out that there was action at a distance. The big breakthrough Isaac Newton did was to work out that there was no physical connection between the sun and the planets, and that gravity worked with no physical connection, which was very against the kind of current Aristotelian view of the cosmos at that time, where everything had to be connected. And it's probably because of his interest in alchemy and magic that he actually could make that conceptual leap, because that's magical thinking, that there's a magic. And now he basically thought it was God's love that basically kept the planets together, because he was a weirdo. Well, and also a spiritual man. Yeah, I'm not going to be that cruel about one of the great geniuses of history, but he didn't know what it was. We still don't really know what some people claim to know what it is. I don't know what it is, and they've explained it to me a lot of times, and I still don't know what curvature of space-time really means. I can say it's the curvature of the space-time. Imagine a rubber sheet and a ball bearing, and I can do all that, but I can't really tell you what the hell that actually means in practice.
It freaks me out too, although I'm working on it.
So
I'll have a working theory by the end of the week.
And for some reason, time is mixed up with it. And, okay, I'll take your word for it. But magic never got an Einstein.
Oh, that's nice.
So magic never got an Einstein. So we never got, or a Planck. So we never got quantum theory, and we never got relativity, the equivalent in magic. So we're still at a Newtonian world where we know enough to put a man on the moon, which you can do with Newtonian mechanics, but we don't really know what it is. We can't build a transistor.
So, in the Furthest Station, what we do is we meet ghosts.
Normally, when you feed a ghost, it appears all in one mass, taking on the illusion of solidity as it noms up the magic. This one was like a glitch in a computer game. Its torso bent over backwards at the waist, legs pumping spasmodically, arms outstretched, head held vertically on the end of an obscenely elongated neck. Despite the contortion, we could see that he was a young man dressed in a red 18th century riding jacket and knee breeches. His mouth moved and formed words, but they were hard to catch, like when someone is trying to talk over loud music in a club.
So we meet ghosts on the Metropolitan line, and I was wondering why the Metropolitan line, and then of course I thought, oh, the Furthest Station. The clue is in the title.
Well, actually, I didn't choose it because of the Furthest Station. I found out about the Furthest Station once I started doing research about the Metropolitan line. I chose the Metropolitan line because of it's a tremendously important role in kind of expanding London out to the west. I mean, it is the reason we have that whole swathe of West London, what's known as Metroland. And once you get into it, it's very fascinating. And then I discovered that Chesham is in fact the furthest station on the Underground at all.
See, I thought you'd done that deliberately because you do have a habit in the books of taking Peter out of London, and I'm sure that's deliberate. It's a way, isn't it, of creating London almost as a character in the books by removing him from it from time to time.
Yeah, I like to, so you can look outside. You know.
Which you do, you need to.
My favourite line I've ever written is, "It's a sad fact of modern life that if you drive far enough, you run out of London."
We said it's a novella. Why is it a novella? Why? I mean, after 5 full-scale novels.
So, I'd never really thought of writing novellas, and I'm not that enamoured. I wasn't that enamoured of the novella because it's very hard to sell. It's very hard to sell. People don't want to buy them, although they are becoming much more popular now because they work very well with Kindles. So people pick them up, and it's a good kind of 3-4 hour read. It's good for a flight across, into a commuter flight or a holiday flight. It's a good kind of like fun read length. And Subterranean Press, which is a company that does specialist, I don't know what you really describe them, specialist kind of limited edition copies, and they get all signed. I signed them, all 2,000 of them. Said, do you want to do a novella? And, my instinct as a writer is to go, yes, whenever there's money. I always say, when you're a writer, the response to a question of would you like to do some work is to go, yes, in a loud, clear voice.
Well, you've done quite a lot of writing for money. I mean, we're not going to talk about it a lot, but you wrote for Doctor Who and
well, yes, and I had long periods of unemployment, hence the yes, in a loud, clear voice whenever the word, paid comes up. Although now I can afford to be more picky. My instinct is always to go, yes!
I think every writer's is, isn't it?
You just because you remember that period where you couldn't get arrested, let alone employed. So Subterranean Press asked me if I'd like to do a novella. And I thought, okay. And I thought myself that we would do a novella and then we would combine it with the other short stories and they would publish it as a novella plus short story collection, if they published it at all. I had no guarantee that would be published by my other publishers, except they fell on it with great glee and published it. So I thought, okay.
Well, that's the kind of way you want them to fall on.
Well, yes, you see, I didn't expect them to do that, so I was a bit surprised. So I'm now writing 4 more.
4 more novellas?
Yes.
Are you really?
No, yeah, well, interspersed, because it's something I can do and write a novel. Mm-hmm. I can't write 2 novels in a year, but I can write a novella and a novel in a year.
Well, you also have comic books and graphic novels in this series. Now, I haven't been into Forbidden Planet for so long that I actually haven't seen any of them. I haven't read any of them. Are they the same stories turned into comics? Or you write different stories?
To use a term that I stole from Doctor Who, but is actually a literary term, they are interstitial.
Oh, very nice.
Interstitial. They occur within the gaps in between the novels, and as does the novella.
Have I missed anything else? It's not been turned into a TV show that I.
It's been optioned for a TV show, but I don't know if it will ever be made. You don't know with TV. TV's run by strange people.
Is it going to make you write differently, though? Are the books going to be constructed so they'll turn into a TV show?
My books were deliberately constructed. The first one particularly was written in mind that this is not a TV series.
We won't spoil it, but there's a cataclysm at the end.
Yes,
You could never...
and well, now they will. And now they'll have to if they want to make it, because I said I'm not selling this so it can be set in Bradford and you can do, like a small house fire. No, I said if you want to make this, you have to make it as is.
Ben Aaronovich, thank you very much. The Furthest Station, published by Orion Books, is $12.99. Ben Aaronovich, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That was the Books Podcast with Tim Hague. The Books Podcast is produced by Green Shoot. You can find out more at www.green-shoot.com, and Tim can be contacted on tim@green-shoot.com.